Hi guys, Editing Prof here. I want to take a quick minute to tell you a few things about this video that you're going to watch. I actually made this for a different class that has a different textbook than you, so I might mention a reading that you don't have. Don't worry about that, just keep that in mind. If I mention the name Perea or John Carlos Perea, I know that's not the author of your textbook. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to cover a bit more history and context on Native American powwows in this video than what you get in your textbook. And I'm going to be using a bunch more vocabulary terms. So if you come across a term on your vocab list that you can't find in the textbook, check the Profs videos, either this one on powwows or the next one on the blues. Okay? Enjoy! Hi guys! In this week's video, I want to talk about a few things regarding our look at Native American music and the context of the powwow. I was very fortunate now 2 summers ago in 2016 to attend the Great Mohican Powwow in Loudonville, Ohio, that has been an ongoing annual event for the past at least 30 years, probably now 31 or 32 years at this point. So the clips that I use in this video in particular, I took with permission at that powwow event. So this video is going to be a kind of introduction slash highlight slash let's watch some videos and listen to some music and experience some culture together kind of holistic thing. Also, a quick apology, this video might be a little bit longer than my previous videos. I do try to keep them relatively short, but there's a lot of good information that I want to highlight and some good opportunities for a little musical analysis as well. So let's just dive right in. A quick word about terminology. Native American is usually the term used to designate Native peoples from the United States and the continental United States. And First Nation is usually the term used to designate Native peoples from Canada. These are very generalized terms. Some people don't mind being called Indian or American Indian. Some people take great offense to that. So my advice is to get to know people as people. Be comfortable with them and they comfortable with you before you start trying to figure out labels for anything. But just as sort of a good overall rule, not so much rule of thumb, but how Native peoples are designated in the United States as opposed to Canada. So with that, on to some more specific things from the reading. Perea initially defines powwows as intertribal Native American social events built around a shared repertoire of songs and dances. He then goes on to explain how powwows are so much more than just that pretty straightforward definition. He talks about how, depending on the participant, powwows can have social components, competitive components, economic components, spiritual components, even though it is important to remember that powwows are not religious ceremonies. Going to a powwow is not the same as going to a Catholic mass or to a Protestant church service. It's not the same type of thing. There are also educational components to the powwow, as these are really good places for non-Native Americans to learn about Native American culture. And that was my experience at the Great Mohican Powwow and at every powwow that I have been to, that the participants there use every opportunity to educate people about Native American culture. Not only the traditional culture, or the traditional aspects of culture, but also what Native American culture and life is like in the 21st century, and how Native American culture is expressed in the 21st century. And one of those forms of expression is the powwow itself. It's not merely a place where ancient traditions are put on display for a paying public, okay? These are not ceremonial dances. These are not sacred dances or religious dances per se. But that doesn't mean that these dances aren't important and that they aren't expressions of contemporary Native American culture. So it's important to understand that what you see at a powwow is not what you would have seen 500 years ago in a Native American village. And it's not what you would have seen 100 years ago in a Native American reservation. But it's also not a tourist attraction, or it's a contemporary expression of living culture. And one of the things that influenced the creation of the powwow has to do with the meeting of Western and Native American culture in the late 1800s. This was a time where Western expansion was pushing west, and culturally, on a larger scale, even than they had experienced so far, Western settlers and Native Americans were meeting each other. And the government, the US government, found the performance of Native American music and dance threatening for a various number of reasons. And because of this, the government banned a majority, a great deal of Native American music and dances. Two in particular that I think Paria might mention but doesn't go into a whole lot of detail about are the ghost dance and the sun dance. And if you are interested in more information on those two traditions, I highly recommend, do a little bit of a Google search if you are interested. But those, in addition to many other Native American traditions, were banned by the US government. And because of all of this, the context for Native American music and dance had to change in order to keep it from dying out altogether. If you take away the context for something, if you take away the means and the reason for it to be performed, that thing is going to die out if you don't find other contexts for it. So that's what started happening with Native American music and dance. And one of these other contexts is was Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. This was a performing troupe that was created in 1883 by a man named William Frederick Cody, who was Buffalo Bill. And he hired people for their exotic natures. So he hired Native Americans from all over the country. He hired Mexicans. He hired African American cowboys from out west. And they toured and performed all over the country. And in fact, it became an international tour when several years later they went to Europe, continental Europe and Great Britain, and performed there as well. So this was a new context for Native Americans to perform music and dance for non-Native audiences in the form of entertainment. Now, this wasn't a perfect solution. The idea of Native Americans up on stage singing and dancing for a paying audience, that wasn't a great situation by any means. But it did allow for a couple of things. It created ways for Native Americans to make money to support themselves and to support their families. and it also created a means of professionalizing Native American music and dance. And that has meant a great deal to the perpetuation of Native American music into the 21st century. And there are elements that were developed as part of the Wild West show that have been incorporated into modern-day powwows, and that contributed to the development of modern-day powwows. And one example of this is the Grand Entry, which we're going to see in just a minute. The Grand Entry was influenced both by Native American Warrior Society parades and parades that were staged as part of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. So let's watch part of the Grand Entry from the 2016 Great Mohican Powwow.
All right. Looks like we're ready. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and remove your head coverings. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 32nd Annual Great Mohican Powwow right here in Loudonville, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, it's powwow time! Wild Man, Grand Entry! Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our honor guard. Our head veteran, carrying our Eagle staff, Roger Campbell, veteran of the United States Army. Carrying the American flag, Jerry Banks, veteran of the Navy, retired, and a member of the Army National Guard. Carrying the POWMIA flag, Gary Fruden, a veteran of the United States Army. Headman, Jared Broom from Peshabi Town. Head lady, Anjani Big John, also from Peshabi Town. Our arena director who is taking care of the arena is Daniel Tramper. Our Golden Age men have entered the arena, followed by our Golden Age women. Coming right behind our Golden Age women, let's put our hands together for Vince traditional dancers. Dance hall. Right behind our men's traditional, let's welcome in our grass dancers. Oh man, beautiful dancing. Right behind our grass dancers, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome our fancy feather dancers. Right behind our fancy feather dancers, ladies and gentlemen. Please give them a round of applause. Our traditional women. Right behind our traditional women, let's put your hands together for our beautiful jingle dress dancers. Dance hall. Let's welcome in our fancy shawl dancers, our team brass dancers, our tiny tots are bringing up the rear. Let's give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen. 2016 Grand Entry. How do you like it? Dance your style. begin.
Okay, so you can see in this clip the presentation of many different Native American peoples, but they aren't identified by the MC as belonging to specific tribes, but rather they're identified by their dance category. And this characteristic really contributes to the intertribal nature of powwows. And this intertribal aspect is important because the forced relocation of Native Americans in whatever capacity basically meant that people from all over the country were being just shoved together in different situations on reservations in different areas of the country. People who didn't know each other, who had never, interacted culturally or linguistically with each other before, all of a sudden had to live and work and survive together. And this created this sort of sense of intertribal community among Native Americans in the United States. And another part of this intertribal community building came with the 1950s Federal Relocation Act. This was an incentive for people to move off of the reservations and into various urban areas around the country, where, again, they were marginalized and just sort of bunched together with a whole bunch of different Native American peoples from around the country. So in order to deal with this situation, people started creating friendship houses or community centers to provide support for Native Americans living in these urban centers. And powwows became a part of this community building effort. They allowed Native American songs and dances to be passed on, and they also provided spaces for natives and non-natives to come together and for non-Native Americans to learn about Native American culture. Now, another thing that Perea talks about are the various elements of the powwow that have connection to traditional Native American practice. And one of these has to do with honoring warriors. This, what used to happen in various Native American tribes is that before going off into battle, Native American warriors would be purified, they would be honored, they would participate in various rituals that included music and dance. Then, when they came back, they would be further purified through various ceremonies, again, involving music and dance, and rites to honor them. And this is translated into the honoring of veterans at powwows. And this is done in a couple of different ways. Flag songs and victory songs are used specifically to honor the colors or to honor the flags. So these will be performed during the placement of the U.S. flag, the prisoner of war and missing in action flag, any local Native American flags that are used, and the honoring of the eagle staff, which is specifically Native American and is actually usually placed first. And then there are honor songs, which are performed specifically to honor veterans. So again, let us take an example from the Great Mohican Powwow and listen to a flag song.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as we honor our colors. Rattlesnake Mountain, flag song.
there are a lot of musical characteristics that Parita talks about in the chapter for this week, and the flag song that we just listened to exhibits a lot of them. So now, as best as I am able, I'm going to isolate those musical characteristics for you so you have more to listen for as we go through this week's listenings. So one characteristic that we hear in the voices is called vibrato. That is the waving quality to the vocal tone. So let's listen to that, an isolated clip of that specific musical characteristic. Okay, now another musical characteristic that has to do with rhythm, specifically straight beats and honor beats. Straight beats are just what they sound like. A steady rhythm, a steady beat that just continues throughout the song. Honor beats are also regular. They also fall on the regular metric pulse. Ooh, terminology. But they're a little bit different. These are hard beats or accented beats that usually fall either at the end of a section or between sections. So let's hear an example of both straight beats and honor beats in the context of our flag song. Another musical characteristic that we hear in the flag song is call and response. This is a characteristic of some, not all, Native American music, but you tend to hear it a lot in powwow music. And this is where one person will lead off and another person or a group of people will respond, hence the call and response. Yet another musical characteristic is falsetto. Now, some of these terms, like falsetto and vibrato, will pop up again in the music of other cultures, and each culture uses these musical ideas slightly differently. Native American falsetto is very, very high. Falsetto in general refers to high male singing voices. This is usually a higher range than a man's regular speaking or singing voice. And Native American falsetto is usually very high, very loud, very sharp, and piercing sounding. Some earlier sources would describe this type of sound as scream singing, or even just as screaming. But that is a very negative, very derogatory connotation to this particular musical characteristic. It is much better and more accurate to describe it as high, piercing, loud, using these types of terms. Okay, so let's give this a listen. Okay, and the last musical characteristic that I want to go over is contour. Now, contour is the shape of the melody, how the melody moves through time. And one particular contour that is heard in a lot of Native American powwow music, not all, but a lot of it, is a descending contour, where the melody will start high because they're using falsetto, will start high and eventually drop into a lower vocal range. So in this example, we'll hear again both the use of falsetto and this descending contour. Okay, that was a lot of information. I hope it made sense. As always, if you have any questions or any problems, please let me know. Enjoy this week, and I will see you in the next video.